At exactly 5:42 p.m., the black luxury sedan rolled to a stop outside the Astoria Crown Hotel in downtown Chicago. Most people standing nearby felt nothing. No fear, no tension, no sense that death was only 18 minutes away. But Amara Lewis felt it. She stood barefoot on the cold sidewalk, clutching a small basket of wilted white roses, her fingers numb, not from the weather, but from the words still echoing in her head. Russian words. Cold, precise, deadly. Words she had heard only once before. On the night her mother died. Amara was 9 years old, small for her age, with deep brown skin, tightly coiled curls pulled into a messy puff, and eyes far too serious for a child. Every evening after school, she stood outside the Astoria Crown selling flowers to hotel guests who rarely looked down long enough to see her. To them, she was background noise, invisible. But tonight, invisibility had saved her life, and might save someone else's. Inside the hotel, Daniel Day Park adjusted the cuff of his black suit as he walked through the marble lobby. Tall, broad-shouldered, expression carved from stone. To the public, Daniel Park was an international investor with interests in shipping and real estate. In the underworld, he was something else entirely. An American Mafia boss whose name made grown men lower their voices. Chicago was neutral territory, but enemies were everywhere. That was why Daniel trusted no one completely. Not the hotel, not the city, not even his own security. Especially not tonight. Amara had been restocking her flowers when she heard the voices. 3 men in black security jackets stood near the side entrance, laughing quietly. One of them, tall, blonde, sharp-eyed, spoke first. The detonator activates at 6 o'clock. Amara froze. Her heart skipped. Another voice replied. The car will be destroyed with him inside. Her fingers tightened around the basket. They were talking about a bomb. And worse, they were confident, because they thought no one understood them. But Amara did. Her mother had been Russian. She used to whisper bedtime stories in that language when money was tight and the lights were off. You must listen carefully, her mother would say. Words can save your life. Tonight, they might save someone else's. Amara glanced at the digital clock glowing inside the hotel lobby. 5:44 p.m. 16 minutes. She watched as the blonde guard nodded toward the black sedan parked at the curb. He'll get into the car, like always. Amara's breath caught. She didn't know who he was, but she knew one thing. If she stayed silent, someone was going to die. Amara ran, straight toward the sedan. "Sir!" she shouted, waving her hand. "Sir, please." The driver stepped out instantly. Asian, mid-30s, cold eyes. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Get back. There's a bomb." Amara cried. "Please don't let him." The driver grabbed her wrist and shoved her aside. "Move. Now." She stumbled but didn't fall. Instead, she looked past him and saw Daniel Park stepping toward the car. Her chest burned. She ran again. "Stop." Her voice cut through the air. Everyone turned. Daniel Park paused mid-step. Slowly, his eyes dropped. To her, a child, dirty shoes, torn jacket, holding flowers. "Who is this?" he asked calmly. Amara swallowed hard. "They're going to kill you," she said. A murmur rippled through the guards. Daniel raised one hand. "Silence." "Explain," he said. Amara took a shaky breath and spoke Russian, word for word. Every sentence, every detail. The detonator, the time, the car. Daniel's face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. He switched to Russian instantly. "Repeat it." She did, flawlessly. Daniel Park looked at his head of hotel security, a man named Victor Hale. Step away from the car, Daniel said quietly. Victor hesitated, just for half a second. That was enough. Lock the perimeter, Daniel ordered. Now. Chaos exploded. Guards moved. Radios crackled. Victor turned and ran. Daniel didn't chase him. He looked down at Amara. "How much time?" he asked. She checked the clock. 5:57 p.m. 3 minutes. The bomb squad siren screamed in the distance. Amara's knees finally gave out. Daniel caught her before she hit the ground. As explosions echoed inside her chest, she realized something terrifying. She hadn't just warned a man. She had stepped into a world that would never let her go. And Daniel Park was no longer the same man he had been at 5:42 p.m. The first thing Amara Lewis noticed when she opened her eyes was silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that presses against your ears and tells you something terrible has already happened or is about to. She was sitting on a leather bench inside a private security room of the Astoria Crown Hotel, her feet dangling above the floor. A blanket had been placed over her shoulders. Her basket of flowers sat on the ground beside her, crushed and forgotten. Across the room, men with earpieces spoke in low, urgent voices. And standing in the center of it all was Daniel Park. Still calm, still controlled, but no longer untouched. At 5:59 p.m., the bomb squad confirmed it. There's a device under the rear axle. One of them said, military grade, wired clean, detonation set for exactly 6 o'clock. Daniel didn't blink. How long to disable, he asked. The technician hesitated. We're already past safe margins. One wrong move. Do it, Daniel said. Outside, the black sedan sat alone, cordoned off by flashing lights. Hotel guests were evacuated. Traffic frozen. Phones raised. Whispers spreading. But Daniel heard none of it. His attention was on the small girl watching him from the bench. The girl who had saved his life. At 6 p.m. sharp, the bomb technician raised his fist. Timer stopped. A collective breath released across the room. 1 second later, the technician spoke again. The device was armed. If you'd entered the car, there would have been nothing left. Daniel Park nodded slowly. Then he turned and stared straight at Victor Hale's empty chair. Victor, the hotel's head of security. Victor, the man who had smiled at him earlier that day. Victor, the traitor. He didn't make it out, a guard reported. Caught him 2 blocks away, trying to disappear into a service alley. Daniel didn't raise his voice. Bring him. Amara felt her stomach twist. She had never seen a man interrogated. She didn't want to, but she couldn't look away. Before Victor was dragged into the room, Daniel knelt in front of Amara. Eye level. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Amara, how old are you? 9. He nodded. Do you have family? My grandma. A pause. Anyone else? Amara shook her head. Daniel stood. To everyone in this room, he said evenly, no one speaks in front of the child unless I allow it. No one argued. Victor was shoved into a chair, wrists zip-tied, face pale. You don't understand, Victor said quickly. I was forced. The Russians. Daniel raised a hand. Victor stopped talking. Daniel switched to Russian. Perfect Russian. The same language Amara had spoken. You chose money over life. Victor's eyes widened. Daniel leaned in. Who paid you? Victor swallowed. The Volkov Syndicate, he whispered. They said you wouldn't see it coming. Daniel straightened. Get him out of my sight. Victor screamed as he was dragged away. Amara flinched. Daniel noticed. The crisis was over. But consequences were just beginning. Reporters flooded the street. Police asked questions. Hotel executives panicked. Daniel ignored all of it. He returned to the security room and sat across from Amara. You understand Russian very well, he said. My mom taught me, Amara replied softly, before she died. How did she die? Amara hesitated. She worked cleaning offices at night. She heard the wrong people talking. They didn't like that. Daniel's jaw tightened. The room felt colder. Later that night, Daniel ordered a full background check. What came back was worse than he expected. Amara Lewis, age 9, lives with grandmother in a one-room basement apartment. No heat some nights. Mother deceased. No father on record. And every day after school, she sold flowers until dark. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. Daniel stared at the file longer than necessary. When Daniel returned to the room, Amara was asleep, curled up on the bench. He covered her properly this time. Then he asked a question that shocked his entire team. What happens to children like her when no one intervenes? No one answered, because everyone knew. That night, Daniel Park made a decision he had not planned, one that had nothing to do with revenge, and everything to do with responsibility. The next morning, Daniel visited Amara and her grandmother, not with bodyguards, not with threats, but with keys. A safe apartment, he said, fully paid, no conditions. Amara's grandmother cried. Amara didn't speak. She just stared at him. Why? She asked. Daniel paused. Because you reminded me what it costs to ignore the small voices. Before leaving, Daniel knelt again. You saved my life, he said. I won't forget that. Amara looked at him carefully. You don't look like a bad man, she said. You just forgot how to be good. The words hit harder than any weapon ever had. As Daniel walked away, his phone vibrated. One message. Volkov doesn't forgive. Daniel smiled faintly. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid. Because this time, he wasn't fighting for power. He was fighting for meaning. 3 days after the bomb attempt, Chicago went back to pretending everything was normal. The Astoria Crown reopened its doors. News cycles moved on. Traffic returned. The city swallowed the fear and kept walking. But Daniel Day, Park did not forget, and neither did the Volkov Syndicate. Because when men like Volkov fail once, they don't move on. They correct the mistake. Amara's new apartment was on the 12th floor of a clean building on the north side. 2 bedrooms, warm heat, a refrigerator full of food, and windows that showed the city like a glittering ocean. Her grandmother, Ms. Loretta, kept touching the walls like they might disappear. This is too much, she whispered. A man like him doesn't give gifts. Gifts come with chains. Amara stood by the window, staring down at the streets. For once, she said quietly, maybe it's not a chain. Maybe it's a door. Loretta looked at her, really looked at her. You're just a baby, she said. Why are you talking like you lived a whole life? Amara didn't answer, because the truth was simple. Kids like her didn't get to be kids for long. Back in Daniel's world, his men were dismantling the old rules. No more hotel deals. No more staying still. No more trusting anyone who smiled too easily. His right-hand man, Gene Seo, laid out photographs on a table inside Daniel's private office. Grainy camera shots of men in hoodies, Russian tattoos, a van parked too long near Daniel's route. They're watching, Gene said. Volkov's men, not local amateurs either. Professionals. Daniel studied the photos with the cold patience of a predator. They failed once, Gene added. They won't fail twice. Daniel didn't respond right away. He was staring at a second set of photographs, ones Gene hadn't placed there. Photos of Amara, standing outside the hotel, holding flowers. Small and alone, Daniel's fingers tightened. What? Gene asked, noticing. Daniel slid the photos forward. They'll come for her, Daniel said quietly. Gene frowned. Why would they care about a child? Daniel's eyes narrowed. Because she made me live. And criminals hated witnesses. But worse than that, criminals hated symbols. And Amara had become one. That evening, Amara walked home from school with her backpack heavy and her hands tucked into her sleeves. She wasn't used to people smiling at her in elevators or teachers calling her bright. It felt unreal. And that's when the first sign appeared. A black SUV parked across the street from her building. Engine running. Windows tinted. Not moving. Amara stopped walking. Her throat tightened. Something inside her, an instinct sharpened by hunger and cold nights, whispered, "Don't go in yet." She pretended to drop her shoelace and bent down. While she tied it, she looked sideways. The SUV's driver door opened slightly. A man stepped out. Tall, heavy coat, hands in pockets. He wasn't looking around like a neighbor. He was watching the building like it was a target. Amara's breathing slowed. She turned and started walking the opposite direction. Not running, not panicking, just walking, like she didn't know. But her heart was racing so hard it hurt. 2 blocks away, a black car rolled up beside her. The window lowered. A familiar face. Gene Seal. "Amara," he said calmly. "Get in." Amara froze. "Why?" Jin's eyes flicked behind her. "Because you're being followed." Her stomach dropped. "What did I do?" Jin's voice softened slightly. "Nothing. That's the problem." She got in. Gene drove without speeding. But the tension in the car was unbearable. "Who are they?" Amara whispered. Jin's jaw tightened. "The men who tried to kill Mr. Park." Amara's eyes widened. "They know about me? They saw you stop it," Gene said. "They'll want to erase what happened." Amara swallowed hard. "So what now?" Gene didn't answer, because at that moment, a loud bang echoed behind them. A car slammed into their rear bumper. Amara screamed as the vehicle jolted forward. Another bang, this time from the side. They were being boxed in. Gene swerved, but a van cut them off. 3 vehicles. One goal. Stop them. Amara's hands shook. She looked out the window and saw men in dark clothing stepping out of the van. One of them raised a gun, casually, like it was nothing. Gene reached under the seat and pulled out a weapon. "Stay down," he ordered. Amara ducked. Her forehead pressed to her knees. Her chest felt like it was collapsing. She thought of her grandmother, her new bed, warm food, a school that didn't treat her like trash. Was it all going to end now? Across town, Daniel Park's phone rang once. Jin's voice cracked through. "We got eyes. They're moving on the kid." Daniel's face turned to stone. Within seconds, Daniel was in his car. Not the same sedan. A different one, armored. His convoy moved through the city like a silent storm. No sirens, no flashing lights. Just pure inevitability. Gene reversed hard into one attacker, crushing the man against the van door. Glass shattered. A gun fired. The shot punched into the car window, inches from Amara's head. Amara covered her mouth, terrified she'd scream and give away movement. Gene fired back. One man dropped. Another dove behind a car. Traffic screamed and scattered. This wasn't a quiet assassination anymore. It was turning into a street war. And the Russians didn't care who got caught in it. Then, like a nightmare gaining a new monster, Daniel's convoy arrived. Black vehicles slammed to a stop. Doors opened. Men stepped out like trained wolves. And Daniel Park himself emerged last. No panic. No shouting. Just a calm walk forward. Black suit, black shirt open at the collar. As if death had an appointment with him and he was right on time. The attackers hesitated. They recognized him. Daniel lifted his hand slightly. His men moved instantly. 2 attackers were disarmed. One was pinned to the ground. Another tried to run. Daniel's guard tackled him. Within seconds, the trap collapsed. Daniel walked to Jin's car. He opened the door and saw Amara curled into herself, shaking. Daniel's face softened in a way none of his men had seen before. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You're safe." Amara looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "They came because of me," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said. "They came because of me. You're just the reason I refuse to lose again." Gene dragged one captured attacker forward. The man spit on the ground and laughed. "You think you can change?" the man said with a Russian accent. "Volkov will kill the girl and make you watch." Daniel stared at him. For a moment, everyone expected blood. They expected Daniel Park to return to the old way, the ruthless way, the way that made his name feared. Daniel stepped closer. Quietly, he said in Russian, "You don't understand. Then he did something no one expected. He turned away. "Call the police," Daniel said. Jean blinked. "Boss!" "Call the police," Daniel repeated, voice steady. His men froze. They had never heard him say that. Not once. He was the type of man who handled things privately, violently, permanently. But Daniel didn't. Not today. Not in front of Amara. Because if she was going to be the reason he changed, then he had to prove it. Later, after the chaos, Daniel sat beside Amara in the back seat of his armored car. She hugged her knees, staring at her shaking hands. "Do they always come back?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked at her. "Yes," he answered truthfully. "In my world, enemies don't stop." Amara swallowed. "Then why did you give me a home?" she whispered. "Why bring me into this?" Daniel's gaze darkened. "I didn't bring you in," he said. "You walked in and saved me." He paused. "But now you're under my protection." Amara blinked. "Like forever?" Daniel didn't look away. "Yes," he said. "Forever." That night, Daniel stood alone in his office. He stared at Chicago's skyline through the glass. Jean entered quietly. Volkov sent a message. Jean said. Daniel didn't turn around. "Read it." Jean hesitated, then spoke. "Return to being the monster you were, or we will burn the child's future to ashes." Daniel's jaw tightened. He finally turned. And for the first time, Jean saw a rage that wasn't about power. It was about protection. Daniel Park grabbed his coat. "Get my lawyers," he said. Jean frowned. "Lawyers?" Daniel's eyes were deadly calm. "I'm going to destroy Volkov," he said. "Not just with bullets." He stepped closer. "But with light." Daniel Park was about to do something the underworld considered suicide. He was going to create something public. Something untouchable. Something that would turn Amara from a target into a symbol the city would protect. And when Volkov realized that, he would start a war. Chicago woke up angry. Not loud angry. Not riot angry. The quiet kind. The kind that happens when people realize something precious is being threatened. And Daniel Park was counting on it. At 9 a.m. sharp, every major news station in the city interrupted regular programming. A press conference. Unusual, even more unusual, was who stood at the podium. Daniel Day Park. No mask, no alias, no middleman, just a black suit, black shirt open at the collar, tattoos faintly visible at his neck, standing in full view of cameras that had never been allowed this close to him before. Behind him stood a small girl in a blue coat, gripping her grandmother's hand. Amara Lewis. Daniel leaned into the microphone. "I'm announcing the creation of the Northside Promise Center," he said calmly. "A fully funded community space offering free tutoring, meals, language programs, legal aid, and housing support for families in this city." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel continued. "This center will operate transparently, publicly, and independently. No political control. No corporate leverage." A reporter shouted, "Why now?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Because a child saved my life," he said. Cameras swung toward Amara. Her eyes widened, but she didn't hide. She stood tall. And in that moment, Daniel Park did something far more dangerous than declaring war. He made himself visible. Across the ocean, Mikhail Volkov watched the broadcast in silence. A thick-set man with dead eyes and a scar across his cheek. Volkov didn't throw things when he was angry. He smiled. "A charity," Volkov said softly. "He thinks the public will protect him." One of his lieutenants hesitated. "The girl, she's everywhere now, touching her wood." Volkov raised a finger. "I don't need to touch the girl," he said. "I'll burn the man." Orders were given. Money moved. A plan began unfolding that didn't involve guns. It involved betrayal. 2 nights later, Daniel received a call. From someone he trusted. Gene Seal. "Boss," Gene said quietly, "there's a problem with the center's funding. Someone leaked financial ties." Daniel frowned. "Leaked?" "Anonymous sources," Gene continued. "They're framing it as money laundering." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Volkov. Not bullets. Paper. Who had access?" Daniel asked, Gene didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was tight. "Only 3 people," he said. "You, me, and—" The line went dead. Daniel's heart dropped. Amara was leaving school when it happened. A hand grabbed her backpack strap. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by traffic. A van door opened. She was pulled inside, blindfolded. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the vehicle sped away. She thought of her grandmother, of Daniel, of the promise that she'd be safe. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't scream again. She remembered her mother's voice. "Listen, stay calm. Fear makes you deaf." Daniel received the message minutes later. A single photo. Amara, blindfolded, alive. Text beneath it. "You can't protect light in the dark." Daniel stood very still. Then he did something that shocked every man in the room. He picked up his phone and dialed the police, not as a last resort, as a strategy. Within hours, the story exploded. A child who saved a man's life. A community center meant to protect families. A mafia boss trying, publicly, to change. And now, a kidnapping. Parents protested. Teachers spoke out. Community leaders demanded answers. Volkov had underestimated something critical. Chicago didn't care who Daniel Park used to be. They cared about what was being destroyed now. Amara was held in an abandoned warehouse near the river. The men guarding her were nervous. They hadn't expected this much attention. Sirens echoed in the distance. Helicopters circled. One guard muttered, "This is wrong," before the other could respond. The doors burst open. Police, federal agents, and behind them, Daniel Park. No weapon in his hands, just rage in his eyes. Amara was untied in seconds. She ran straight into Daniel's arms. He held her like she weighed nothing, like he would never let go. The arrests came fast. Financial crimes, human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder. Volkov's network unraveled in public view, not because Daniel outgunned him, but because Daniel outgrew him. The underworld whispered. The man who chose light had become untouchable. Months later, the North Side Promise Center opened its doors. Children laughed inside rooms that used to be abandoned. Amara stood at the entrance, cutting the ribbon. Daniel watched from the side, not as a king, as a guardian. Gene Seo, now cleared and reinstated, stood beside him. "You could have ruled forever," Gene said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "I was ruling nothing," he replied. "I was surviving." Amara ran up and hugged his waist. "You're not scary anymore," she said. Daniel smiled. "I hope not," he said. That night, Daniel stood alone on his balcony, city lights stretching endlessly before him. He thought about power, about fear, about the little girl who heard death coming and spoke anyway. Daniel Park had been many things in his life. A criminal, a monster, a survivor. But now he was something rarer. A man who chose to change. And in doing so, changed everything.